Welcome back. If you would, could you please state your name and your title?
My name is Steve Miller. I'm the director for Wicomico County Recreation Parks and Tourism.
Chuck Russo, Deputy Director, Wicomico County Recreation Parks and Tourism.
Thank you. Steve?
Thank you. Good morning, Council President Dodd, members of the council, and members of the public who are watching remotely. I want to thank you for having me here this morning. I'm here this morning to talk about some revenue challenges that we're facing at the Civic Center this year and how we anticipate a shortfall in this year's budget with respect to revenue. We've been talking about this for months with county administration, with our board. I know Mr. Dodd has heard many of those conversations over the last several months, and we agreed that it would be a good idea just to come before the whole council to kind of communicate and tell you where we are and some of the challenges that we're experiencing so that there are no surprises come June. So our intent here is to communicate information with you, and hopefully we'll do that. There are three issues which I really hope to outline and address here this morning with respect to the Civic Center. Number one is that we have a structural deficit just in the way the Civic Center budget is built, and that is with respect to revenue. Number two, it's been a very difficult year for us on the entertainment front, which of course is where a lot of our revenue comes from, is in entertainment events. It's been a very challenging year, and I'll touch on that. And then thirdly, and this obviously is changing as we speak, but recent developments with the coronavirus and public events is obviously going to further impact us, and so I'll touch on what's happening there with respect to the Civic Center. So when you combine those three things, when you have a structural deficit, you've had a difficult year in entertainment, and then we have a national crisis on our hands, we're going to end up with a shortfall, and that's why we're here today, and I'd like to outline these issues and then present some courses of action that we have taken and some possible steps that we could take as we look ahead, and then answer any questions that you might have. Now, in terms of the Civic Center budget as a whole, I know council members are aware of this, but just for members of the public that are watching, the Civic Center budget, like Recreation and Parks, is a special government fund. I know for years it's been talked about as an enterprise, and I think for many years it was actually listed in the county books as an enterprise, but the Civic Center has never really truly been a self-sustaining enterprise. I'm not aware of any publicly owned, publicly operated arenas in the country that are true enterprises that turn a profit, facilities of our nature. We're a government fund. As I said, like Recreation and Parks, we require an appropriation to balance our budget, as all other departments in the county do, or most departments do. So what I'd like to do is just give you a quick snapshot of the Civic Center appropriation over the last 15 years. If you look at this is from 2006 through 2020. You can see roughly the appropriation has nearly doubled. It's grown 88% from 2006 to 2020. Now, obviously, I've heard criticism and I've heard concern over that number growing, but there are two primary factors that drive that number. Number one is salary, number two is benefits. You take salary, for example, from 2006 to 2020, salaries have grown by 60%, roughly $400,000 growth in salaries. Part of that, of course, salaries grow over time like in all departments, but part of that is 3 years ago a decision was made to evenly split. Our department is comprised of Recreation, Parks, Tourism, and the Civic Center. Our overhead staff, myself, Chuck, Pam, we have box office staff, marketing staff that serve all three budgets. We decided to split those evenly, a third, a third, a third. That wasn't done prior to that. So that created an extra burden on the Civic Center as far as salaries go. But so salaries is certainly one factor. But the bigger factor, which I know the county is facing as a whole, is the growth in benefits. If you look at the Civic Center, when benefits first started getting charged to the Civic Center budget in 2006, since that time to now, we've seen a 181% growth in the last 15 years in the cost of benefits at the Civic Center. That's, again, more than $400,000. If you were to look at it another way, if you were to just to take the appropriation out of the Civic Center budget, so do a true apples to apples comparison, just take out the benefits, how have we done over the last 35 years? If you look at this slide, you see the appropriation 1985, 1995, 2005, and then where we are this year. And you can see from 1985, 35 years ago, to 2020, we are $4 difference. If you were just to take the benefits out of the picture, compare apples to apples, we're $4 difference with the growth of salaries, the growth of the cost of everything to run your operation. So you could argue that in terms of performance, in terms of things that we can control, over the last 35 years, we're on par or better than where we've been in terms of the things that we control. Here's another way to look at it. If you were to look at our appropriation that we get from the county, what percentage of that is the benefit? If you look at 2006, when benefits were first loaded, it was roughly half of the county appropriation covered our benefits, and then roughly half covered everything else, which is salary, operating costs, event expenses, all the other things that take to run that building. If you look at where we are now, 2020, 71% of our county appropriation is now dedicated to benefits, which means there's a much smaller piece of the pie that we need to spend on salaries, operating costs, all the other things that make our building go. Which, practically speaking, the reason I'm telling you that is because more than any other department, there's very much pressure, and we're very reliant on our ability to generate revenue because there's very little appropriation to cover our costs. How does this compare to the rest of county departments? So if you look at the next slide, the green again is the percentage of benefits of the appropriation. So we took 10 departments, including recreation and parks, and you can see most departments in the county, the percentage of their benefits that cover in their total appropriation is roughly a third. It's 20 to 30%. It's pretty consistent across the board in all the different departments. And then you get to the end, the Civic Center, 71% of our appropriation is tied to benefits, which again means there's very, very little left to cover everything else that we need to do. So again, revenue has been our charge. Revenue is our challenge. And again, that's why we're here today. I'll show you this next slide. In this current fiscal year, FY20, in our budget, it's been set at $1.2 million as far as net revenue for events. That's a net number. So picture that red line as the bar that we've got to hit to make our budget work. The net revenue number includes things like rent, concessions, catering, box office fees, all the things that are tied to events. The bar that's been set for us is $1.2 million to net to make our budget go. The challenge with that is if you look at the last 11 years, this is how events have performed for the last 11 years. Most of the time we're in that $850,000 to $1 million range in net revenue. So even in a really good year, if we were to hit $1 million in net revenue, that budget is $1.2 million. So on July 1, when the fiscal year turns, I know I'm looking at a $200,000 to $250,000 hole on day one because we've just not been able to hit that revenue target. I couldn't find data going back further, but I would guess it's much further than the last 11 years, but we've not been able to hit that target. And so that's the first issue, is that we have a structural issue in the Civic Center budget, and it's tied to revenue, particularly revenue that's tied to events. The math just doesn't work, and we feel it needs to be addressed in some way. The second issue that I touched on is that we've had a very difficult year in FY20 in terms of events. Some of them are bad luck, some of them are maybe you could say bad decisions or whatever else, but we've had some events that were losers. That at the beginning of the fiscal year, we had several events that didn't perform, that didn't sell tickets. We lost money when we were expecting to make money, and that happens sometimes in entertainment. And so we've had several shows that were losers that did not perform the way we wanted. We've had our share of bad luck. We had an Alabama show, which is 4,000 people, which is a big deal for us in this community. The lead singer got vertigo, and so the whole tour got bumped a year, and so we lost revenue for that and had to refund a lot of tickets, things of that nature. We've had family and kid shows, and Chuck could give you more details on this type of thing, but family kid shows, a lot of those acts that tour that we'll usually pick off one or two a year for family kid shows, a lot of them have chosen to test out different markets this year. So we had a very difficult time getting those shows to come to the Civic Center. So it's been a very, very challenging, difficult year for a lot of different reasons. Some shows didn't go, some canceled. We've had a lot of challenges. And entertainment drives a lot of that $1 million net number, and it drives a lot of the spin-offs. So concessions, catering, box office fees, amusement tax, all those things that turn those buckets are not happening when people aren't buying tickets and these shows aren't performing the way we need them to perform. So we've known about this trending for some time. We knew coming out the fiscal year was a difficult start, and so we've been working with the administration and through our board to try to mitigate the losses because we've known it's been a very challenging year. So we've taken some steps to try to close the gap. We've had several positions at the Civic Center that we've not filled, which has been a challenge for us, but we've tried to make that work. We've cut out things like travel. We've put off projects and some repairs and expenses. We've done everything that we know how to do to try to tighten the belt and to close the gap as best we can. We're trying to generate revenue in other ways. We've had some success over the last 6 months with Midway shows. I don't know if any of you have attended those, but we've had some dinner shows in Midway, just looking for other ways to generate activity, generate revenue, and we've had some success there. But again, we've had a very challenging year overall. A few weeks ago, when I was scheduled to initially make this presentation, I was hoping to end with a little bit of optimism in that our spring schedule was very strong. We were poised to make an announcement of a major concert in April that has since postponed to next year. We've had someone mentioned DPI, we've had 4 other major events that are both tourism and civic center events that have canceled, and that's just the start. Over the next few weeks, we've had events cancel. And so a lot of our business happens in the spring, so 3 weeks ago, we were optimistic that we could somewhat close that gap. Of course, now everything has changed with what's going on. We're a public event facility, and right now we don't have the ability to run public events, and so obviously that's a major concern. And we don't know at this point, like nobody knows at this point what the impact of that will be. But in our business, it's going to be significant. It's a lot of lost revenue, a lot of lost events, and it's certainly making a very challenging situation much more challenging. And I know the council is aware of that, but just wanted to point that out. I would hesitate at this point. If you were to ask me 3 weeks ago, we thought the gap would be somewhere around $300,000 in a worst case, and we felt like we could close that gap with the events that we had scheduled. At this point, I'd hesitate to even throw out a number because we simply don't know how long events are going to postpone or cancel, and we just don't know what that impact is going to be, but it's going to be a significant shortfall on the revenue end. And that's something we're going to track, obviously, as the spring goes on. The last part, and I'd open it up for questions. I'd be happy to answer anything that you'd want to talk about, but the last part is, what do we do about it? Ultimately, some of this is out of our control, certainly with coronavirus and what's going on, but in terms of the other issues, ultimately that will be up to the administration and the council to decide what do we do. In terms of this fiscal year and the challenge that we're facing, we don't have a reserve fund at the Civic Center. The only reserve that's at the Civic Center is the restoration fee, and that's tied to legislation. But we do have, and just throwing an idea out, we do have a reserve fund balance at Recreation and Parks. So if it was the will of the executive and the county council, one of the things that we could consider at the end of the year is to transfer reserve funds from Recreation and Parks to cover this hole, and we would not have to dip into the general fund. That could be a course of action that we could consider, and there's other things. But in terms of moving forward and looking at the FY21 budget and looking ahead, we do have a revenue issue. And I'm speaking for myself here, but I would see 2 possible courses of action. One is that we lower that revenue bar, that revenue figure, since we've not been able to meet that in over 12 years. If we lower that bar and make it more achievable, the appropriation would need to rise correspondingly for us to continue as we are, and that's certainly one thing we could look at. Another way, if the council did not want to go that way, one other avenue that we could pursue is to take drastic measures on the revenue side, which would include increasing our rent, increasing ticket fees, increasing food costs. There are a lot of venues that charge for parking. We don't. We could look at free events. We do a lot of free community events like the dental clinic. We do the kids free backpack event. We do a lot of civic events, which I think personally are a good thing. But we could look at those types of things and change course there. One of the challenges is, and I'm sure council members have heard this in your talk with constituents, is one of the complaints we hear often is that the fees are already too high. People don't like the ticket fees. People don't like the fees. And so by taking drastic measures there and raising, it could have the opposite effect, which is to drive people away, and we certainly don't want to do that. But these are all things that we have to consider and have to look at. My intent today was to tell you where we are and to tell you the challenges that we're experiencing, and it's more so on the revenue side. And it's something that one way or another we need to look at and to address. I realize that the county has many other challenges, and as a community, there's many other bigger challenges that we're facing. But we did want to communicate with the council again so that there's no surprises, tell you where we are. And with that, I guess I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Councilman Hastings.
How do you and the staff confidently know what the public wants as far as entertainment?
As far as the type of entertainment?
Yeah, I'm aware of Alabama, but no way I was ever a fan.
Yeah.
And I did go to a lot of monster truck events when I was a kid, but what method or how do you know confidently that you are doing what the public wants and what will pay?
I'll let Chuck touch on this, but we try to keep our ear to the ground in terms of communication with the public. We have a marketing team that gets regular feedback on social media, and we try to engage people as to the types of acts that they want. A lot of times, and again, I'll let Chuck touch on this, a lot of times there is a disconnect because people want to see big acts. They want to see Aerosmith or whoever. The costs of acquiring those acts, sometimes people are not willing to pay the ticket price. So it is a balancing act to try to figure out what can work from a financial standpoint, what people want to see. Chuck, if you want to fill in on that.
Yeah, basically, Steve's right, research, but one of the things to realize is the largest grossing show in the history of the Civic Center is $215,000. It was Gretchen Wilson, which was country many, many years ago. So if you do the math on that with today's ticket prices, like Steve's saying, most acts wouldn't even fit in our facility with the amount of seats that we have. Mm-hmm. So you chop off a huge amount of artist availability right off the top. And our sales history, even with shows that we've tried over the recent past, has not been as successful as we would have liked. An example would be like Matchbox 20 came in, which is a big name act. And as soon as that act was booked, you go, hey, that's going to do wonders. It was the lowest selling show on that tour. We just had Kelsey Ballerini, who opened her tour, which was country, and she was the lowest selling tour. That's one of the worst things you want to hear in our industry, is that your market is the lowest selling. But it comes down to demographics. We have to do that research with the local business community to find out disposable income. It comes down to choices. And so those are big things. Steve mentioned entertainment. The circus, Ringling Brothers, we used to have that circus every year. Well, they no longer have a tour, so that circus doesn't exist. We've done Disney on Ice over the past, but that's usually an every few year type of show. It's cyclical on when it can come into the market. But research on the radio, TV stations, social media, those are the things and what the community wants. Generally, we're a family market. You talked about the monster truck show, and with kids shows and different things like that. And those things have become a lot harder to attain. All the communities want those kind of shows in their community, and we've got to be able to sell the tickets for those shows to keep them in our community as well.
Adding on to that, is there a public resource? Is there like a association or something that you could see? I'm assuming there's some sort of networking or some sort of resource where it says, okay, these acts are the ones who are trending, are going to have the most high dollar.
Yeah, we're in two organizations. We're members of the International Association of Venue Management. So we have several staff members that are members of that, so they can stay plugged in with what's out there and available. We're also a member of what's called the Venue Coalition. And the Venue Coalition is similar venues all across the United States and Canada. And we conference call and work together with that coalition. It's like a talent agency that works for all these venues on placing entertainment. So we know the constant tours that are available, the pricing of those tours, and availability of those tours, and work closely with the Venue Coalition on trying to bring those types of shows into Salisbury.
Yeah,
Councilman Holloway.
I was on the Civic Center Commission back in the 90s, as Chuck remembers. I think you came to work there when I was there, right?
That's right.
And this has been a fight since then. It was probably a fight before then. You have to decide whether you want the taxpayers, the budget to fill in to help support the Civic Center. It's something good for the county, even though it does cost us money. Mm-hmm. But, back then, back in the 90s, we had the situation where everybody thought that the beer and alcohol sales would save the Civic Center. So that was finally initiated just a few short years ago. Has that been profitable?
Yes, it never hit. I've heard the same thing, that it's going to save everything and turn a profit. It never hit the projections. It has been profitable. It's been good for us.
Well, last time we talked to you about it, you said it wasn't. So when
Well,
we were in here a year ago, you said
it's always been profitable. It's just the level of profit was not what was projected when we did the study through the Stadium Authority and whatnot, but that is profitable, and it certainly helps.
So the profits has exceeded the cost of implementing it, put it in,
Oh, yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Have you considered a reduction in force? I know you said you haven't hired any new people, filled any blanks, but, you know, you're looking at a situation now where you're not going to be booking anybody in the future, so has that been considered?
We're going to follow the county administration's lead on that as far as reduction in force. Our intent's not to hire positions until this fixes itself. I think there's so much unknown. We would need the county executive's direction as far as, you know, how long is this going to last, and how does that impact the workforce? But
Right.
at this point, we're not,
Okay.
that I'm aware of at least.
Councilman Ackley?
This may sound like a very simple question, but were you not charged benefits before? I guess I wasn't clear on that.
My understanding, and Chuck, you've been here longer, my understanding was that was loaded to the department budget in 2006. Prior to that, I believe it came out of the general fund.
Okay. Okay.
But as far as showing it in the department budget was 2006, unless
Joe.
anybody.
Oh, that's fine. We had a line item in the budget that took care of all the benefits.
Okay.
And that was eliminated whatever year, Wayne?
Yeah, the intention was,
It's a truth in budgeting is what it was.
it's truing up with the
Right.
actual cost.
I can hear you, Wayne, but
Well,
For the recorder.
It shows what actually each department is costing.
okay,
instead of-
okay.
instead of putting-
More of a line item.
yeah, the reason we did that is that it's just better accounting. It shows the true cost of each one of the departments. So that's the reason that was done. And it does, I was watching Governor Hogan's 11 o'clock press conference, which I can talk to you about if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But it does skew the results of the Civic Center when you look at them historically, because the accounting changed.
Okay.
So Steve has tried to true that up to give you a better picture of what's really happened. But, you know, I mean, the fact of the matter is, Joe has touched on it. It's, you know, it's revenue. It's being able to generate revenue. And what we're seeing is that the marketplace has changed, not only nationally, but locally. And what used to work isn't working any longer. So I think we have to take a real hard look at how we utilize that asset.
Well, I like Steve's idea of utilizing money in the reserve for parks and recs,
I
because
agree
the
with
Civic
that.
Center is parks and recs. I mean, you have baseball or basketball tournaments out there and things like that. So,
No, I
you know,
agree
it's
with that, Joe.
room. So that would be, I think that would be one avenue to take.
Thank you for
Agree.
clarifying that
Sure,
budget
absolutely.
item. Steve, I also wanted to ask you, our population has grown, and I know Kids Club, after-school programs. As a parent, I utilize those, and I can't imagine not having those. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are in expanding different maybe community centers, more after-school programs at every school, the middle school level.
Definitely middle school.
I mean, I don't know what I would have done without Kids Club, to be honest. And I know
Yeah.
many parents rely on it. And so I was just, if that's an avenue you pursued. And then last question is this building, is a Civic Center is it even conducive to having larger venues to generate income? Because if it's not something that's conducive to making a profit, then it may not even be a road we should go down.
I can touch on both of those if
Okay.
you don't mind. So with the after-school programs, we run right now in 7 different sites across the county. It is something, so we use Board of Ed facilities for that. So that is something we've explored with the Board of Ed to expand. In the past, we have done that and had varying degrees of success. If we don't have enough children to participate, it doesn't make it worth it. So we're open to that. If there was a demand, we would certainly explore that with the Board of Ed on facilities, and that's a possibility that we could expand those services if there's a demand. So that's something we'll work with the Board of Ed on that first.
Would you be willing to work with other venues on that for after-school programs such as community church, a community faith-based organization, or, I know we have it at the community center in West Side.
Yeah, we operate actually out of the West Side Community Center, but like, for instance, we use the church gym, I'm drawing a blank on that, the Glenn Robinson. Yeah, Glenn Robinson Community Center we use for some recreation programs. So we look for open, available space, so we're open to doing that. And if there's demand, we can certainly rise to that challenge. In terms of the second question, I kind of touched on it in my comments. You go anywhere in the country, venues of our size, they're not profitable. Ocean City Convention Center is not profitable as far as that goes. So there is a cost. If you're asking me my personal opinion, there's also a value to be able to host graduations, to be able to host DPI, to be able to host community events, tourism events that generate economic impact. There is a return, but there is also a cost. And what I tried to demonstrate here is the bulk of the cost is tied up in benefits. I think we do a fairly good job of trying to minimize the rest of those costs by event revenue and those types of things. This year has been exceptionally poor. But as a general rule, I think it's an asset that's worth having. Again, that could be part of a bigger discussion with the council and the administration, but it is an asset that I believe the community benefits from and that they enjoy for a wide variety of things. We do happy timers, senior programs, we do youth basketball programs.
Harlem Globetrotters.
Harlem Globetrotters, there you go. So we do a lot of different things which are quality of life assets. Recreation parks, the appropriation is $2.5 million. Civic Center, what we're talking about is a little over $1 million, even if it increases. So, relatively speaking, we're about 2 to 3% of the overall county budget, and there's a lot of return. That's my opinion, but certainly that could be a public discussion. It's been discussed at our board. I know Mr. Dodd was part of those discussions as
Mr.
well.
Cannon?
Yeah, I was going to say, Steve, the benefit percentage appropriation, I kind of find that a little confusing, whereas I think it would be easier to understand if it were in actual dollars, whereas we saw what the revenue was, what the appropriations were, and what the benefits amounts were, because the percentages can be somewhat misleading. I would just like to know if your benefits, based on your operating budget alone, are astronomically higher than roads or something to that effect. Then this makes it look like your benefits are astronomically higher than any other department. It's not really true.
Right.
But that's what this sort of looks like, because you're comparing it to the appropriation only.
Right.
So I'd rather see how your benefits are skewing based on your actual operating budget.
Sure.
To make sure it's realistic, and I'm sure it's going to show that it's realistic.
Yeah.
So that the benefits really aren't holding you back, because that is commensurate with your operating budget. What's holding you back is just simply the fact that you need more appropriations. I don't understand how appropriations are being considered to be tied percentage-wise to benefits.
I turned this off. So what I was trying to illustrate, because I understand your point, I think what I was trying to illustrate is that relative to the appropriation, so it costs something to run the Civic Center. Relative to what that costs, the percentage of that cost more and more has been taken up by benefits. And the only reason I point that out is because now you look at 29% of what we get from the county now has to cover all of our salaries, all of our operating expenses, all of our event costs. There's much less now that we have as far as county support goes to cover everything else. So I was just trying to illustrate that benefits now is the bulk of what the county contributes, and we're now forced to generate revenue to cover that gap, and that is a challenge, and it's disproportionate. My intent here was what we're asked to do in terms of revenue generation. Like, even if you look at Rec and Parks, which is part of our department, we generate revenue in Rec and Parks through programs and events and facilities. But even there in Rec and Parks, 32% of that appropriation is benefits. I was just trying to illustrate the.
I understand, but
yeah.
I think that a better evaluation would be really to evaluate how your expectations of revenue are falling so extremely short that the appropriations you're receiving cannot possibly accomplish what you need to accomplish.
Yeah.
And there's no fault to that. Believe me, I a friend of mine that was in the promotions business, and you'll go bankrupt 10 different times in 10 different years, because it's impossible to guess what venues are going to be accepted by the public. I don't care how good you are at it. So I guess if you maybe were into one venue and you knew that very well, like, you're a promoter for one particular group, you know right where to go. But when, in your case, you're trying to bring in a myriad of different venues to this audience, it's hard to pick and choose. I think you need to recognize that. You were suggesting whether you lower the bar on the Civic Center events revenue. I mean, if you haven't hit that mark in 10 years or even more like you were suggesting, yeah, that's got to come, it has to come way down.
Yeah.
And maybe we need to reevaluate the Civic Center budget and just accept what you were suggesting as revenue, as it's going to be a loss. Because I don't see, well, I guess there is some revenue that you're, and my guess is a lot of this revenue is your consistent venues such as the DPI banquet and all that, and the ones that are killing you are the entertainment venues. Is that right?
Yeah,
Maybe
the,
not.
the entertainment fluctuates, and again, that's, one of the, you pointed this out, and I think those are all excellent points. One of the challenges is we build our budget, January, February, so we're building out 12 to 18 months ahead where we don't know exactly what's going to book, what's going to be on tour, what's going to be in the market, so it is a crystal ball. And that number, that 1.2 million for net, it is too high. We've not hit that in a long time, and actually that number was even bigger several years ago. It was 1.5. So we've tried to steadily bring that down to be more realistic, but even still, it's not. I think our attempt in the FY21 budget is to try to balance this thing out and get this thing under control, but it is difficult to forecast.
Well, I say that because I think when you come back to us, so I'm sure we're going to talk to you during the budget session, I think you really need to emphasize the fact of not so much I think that the benefits are killing you, because I saw that, I thought, well, what are you paying? Are people getting 10 times the benefit of everyone else in the county? I think we should more realistically look at what your losses are, honestly, with the Civic Center, and face that head on so that we know how to act on that. I think that's what the dollar amount should emphasize, not the fact that your benefits are killing you, but your revenues are killing you.
Yep.
Your lack of revenues are killing
Yep.
you.
Mr. Miller, I would like to comment on this chart and maybe a couple others. I think it would benefit, and I think it would definitely help if you had the number of employees listed, especially over the years, and kind of draw a relation to the number of employees compared to the benefits. I think that would help. And then there was some of the charts, like the net chart, you have 2019 compared to 2009. I'd like to see what the Civic Center did prior to 2009, like maybe 10 years prior. I think maybe that would help us. 'Cause I tell you, we can't afford to lose the Civic Center. It is a quality of life mechanism for the county, and I think the people really appreciate it. We just have to do something to get the right venues in there.
Yeah.
Mr. Callaway?
Yeah, in reference to Larry's statement, Chuck, when you started, what was it, 94, 93?
93.
93. How many people were in management at the Civic Center then? I know there was the manager and you, and
Yeah, it was just two, and then you would add an accountant,
Yeah.
box office manager,
yeah. Okay.
and then
How many we
support
got?
staff.
How many we got now?
It hasn't grown.
Well,
that
we
much.
got a kitchen manager. We got a beer and wine manager, right?
Right.
We got a marketing manager, right?
Right,
So-
well, that's shared through the department, but
Yes.
yeah, I know what you're saying.
So there's a lot change. That's changed, but the revenue hadn't changed much. So I think that's part of the problem. A lot of things have grown on that end.
And Chuck, you mentioned the different concerts, and I think you know that I've been to many concerts over the years, last 30 years. And I think the last one that you mentioned was Kelsey Ballerina. I didn't go to that, and because of the ticket prices, those ticket prices are astronomical compared to 2 or 3 years ago. And I think I had a discussion with Steve or somebody, and we were told it was a promoter making those prices, but those prices were leveled around $45, $50 per seat. And I think that is probably the reason that some of these concerts aren't filling seats, is because you may be able to afford to use up your savings to go to a $150 concert, but you're not going to another one the next month because you spent all of your money that you had in savings that you used for entertainment. So I would like to see us come up with some idea, some plan to make better use of our concerts. And I know you didn't explain it, but let's say when Alabama comes here, are we really making money off of Alabama other than concessions? They're the ones making money off the tickets, right?
Yeah, Chuck, I'll let you.
The venue will make rental from the promoter.
That's
That's a
about all we're
promoter
making
out of
this event.
Tennessee, so we'll make the rental, and then the ancillary revenue streams, as Steve mentioned those. And entertainment on a one-day event, does generate a lot of ancillary revenue, so those are important factors.
Because of concessions.
Right, all those different factors.
We got a lot of employees to pay.
Right.
Right. Mr. Hastings, did you have another comment?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd say this is an important public good. I can't put a value on me meeting Bob Dylan in 2002 at a concert there, which was super cool. But quick questions on my mind. So is there a solar in the parking lot? Is there things like, are there other ways you can generate revenue? I know that goes into technically it gives you capital, but you've got a large parking lot. You could do like Warwick or or Salisbury University, or are there? I don't know if there's other. Do we have a hotel room tax fee? Do we have? Okay, I don't know if we. And what is as far as the accounting when it comes to the graduation ceremonies, the dentist, or the other kind of thing? Is there a way to for the accounting of that? Is that an in kind? I know it's money changing hands from the, from schools for graduation, like schools to here. But is there a better way to account for that? Of what would be a rental fee or something like that?
Yeah, so.
In kind of a contribution, or I don't know how that.
Yeah, so there's an arrangement with the Board of Ed. There is some trade for we utilize facilities for things like Kids Club and after-school program, and they would utilize for graduation. So there's some trade as far as that goes, but the Board of Ed does pay a rental rate, and it's a reduced rate, and we do track those types of things, whether it's a free or reduced rental, we do track that. So we know that potential lost revenue, if you were to charge full freight, so we're able to track that kind of thing. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
Well, I'd make one more comment, and that is that I think the one thing we learned through this last recession a while back was that one of the highest priorities of the county, over and above roads and education, public safety and whatnot, is the quality of life, and that's what you're driving. We don't make a profit on roads. We don't make a profit on public safety. We don't make a profit on education. Quality of life is very important, and I would fully support whatever attempts that you're making to try to improve the quality of life in this county. And I think you are. You've been burdened with this albatross that there must be a profit here, there must be a profit. Of course, we want to see that, and we'd love to see that, but I think we do have to accept that, rationally, that may not be the situation, and it's sort of a bit of a shift here where I think you're going to have to reintroduce your budget, recognizing that to a certain degree, you're not going to be a profitable company, and everything else would be gravy above that if you were to bring in it. And if you were operating efficiently, that's key too. I know some questions here as far as management, and I don't have any problem with any of that, but as far as how you operate efficiently is critical in all cases. But still, I think we have to accept the fact that there is the potential of losses in the Civic Center, just as we have losses in any other department, to improve the quality of life of the citizens.
Yeah, I agree with you, John.
Ms. Holloway.
We've been fighting this back since you got hired. This was discussions when I was on the Civic Center Commission. It's never been profitable. Mm-hmm. It's going to be tough to be profitable, but we have to decide whether we do want something that does improve the quality of life and gives people the opportunity to go to different events there. So
Yeah,
I agree with you.
I think one of the keys here, and I think this is very important, is that the entertainment industry has really changed. And our marketplace has changed. And I really think that we do have to drive the top line. This is really a revenue issue. We always try to be more efficient in terms of how we're operating, but the entertainment industry has really fundamentally changed. And I think we've got to take a hard look at the Civic Center model and rethink that model to see whether or not we're keeping up as well as we can with that changing industry, and we're working on that as we speak. So, while we can look at the budget issues, I don't think there's a venue in the country like ours that generates a profit. Mm-hmm. The state of Maryland writes a check to underwrite the Ocean City Convention Center losses on an annual basis.
And we need to find a way to
tag on that. Yeah, I'd love to have the state help us out that way.
get our roads money.
So I think in terms of being efficient, yes, that's absolutely critical. We want to keep that operating loss as minimal as we can
Right.
for our taxpayers while maintaining that quality of life asset. That being said, I think we need to take a very, very hard look at the model to see how our venue fits in today's entertainment environment and how it will fit, say, over the next 5 years. And I think that's a very, very important task that we've got to dive into.
I wonder, with that said, and Councilman Holloway, I think he was leading into that when he asked Chuck, how do you know what kind of concerts to book?
Right, yeah.
And is there a way that we can do a separate type of committee with people that are really interested in entertainment and find out, poll, do whatever, to find out what they want to see come to our Civic Center?
I don't think it hurts, Larry. I certainly don't think it hurts. Bill Chambers and I went to Annapolis, I forget when it was, and we met with the Rams Head group.
You're right.
And the
And they
Rams
have
Head
concerts
group,
all the time.
They have concerts all up and down the East Coast. And they were, quite frankly, surprised at the venue that we had. So we invited them down. They were very, very interested in the venue, principally because of the proximity of 2 universities. Because that's really the population that they look at. So that was an untapped resource, if you will, and they were favorably impressed. So rethinking how we're programming and who we're dealing with and who we're trying to attract is really, I think, paramount. It's critical. And as you know, Bill Chambers has a long history in arena operations. So inside the Civic Center Advisory Board, you know, I think we really need to task that board with, hey, let's think outside the box.
And maybe have a subcommittee of
Absolutely.
that and
Absolutely.
invite some people from the college.
Absolutely.
Because that is big all across the
Yep.
country. That colleges
Yep.
put on big concerts, and Salisbury University has
Yep.
6,000 plus students, so
Yep.
that is something
And
to
we're
tap
not tapping
into.
into that population to the extent that we could.
And I tell you, as a council member, I'm going to always defend our quality of life issues. The Civic Center, the Delmarva Shorebirds, our events such as sporting events and the softball World Series. That's what brings people to our community, and they spend money at the restaurants, at the hotels, at the convenience stores. They buy gas, so they are spending money indirectly. So, but Josh, do you have another statement? John?
I would just say, and I hate to micromanage your departments when you come here, but when you come here, we have questions and sometimes want to offer suggestions, be that as it may. But, you know, with the way that social media is now, I would think that if you couldn't do it personally, if there wasn't a company that you could hire, there has to be some means by which you should be able to get the word out enough within a year to know exactly what this captive audience in Wicomico County wants to see, or Somerset, and, you know, and the universities, so that you would know before you even opened up the doors or before you even signed a contract that you were going to get 3,000 people at that show. Especially with the way the new age of technology and social media is. So I'm kind of surprised that you can't narrow it down and you open the doors and only, 100 people show up.
John, let me give you an example, and this is NASCAR, which I'm a fan of NASCAR. The attendance at the racetracks has fallen. They're taking seating out. And one of the reasons is people have TVs at home as big as that screen.
That's absolutely right.
And they can sit in their house and see more than they can see going to the race.
Right.
And I haven't been to a NASCAR race in years. I don't have a TV that big, by the way. But you know, and I think that has a lot to do with it. You know, people stay home and play video games. Young people stay home and play video games. You know, but people stay home and watch sports. So, you know, you can watch a great concert. So I think we're up against that. I think
really
that's
are.
part. I think we're really up against that as much as
And that's
as
what I
much
mean
as
about the
anything.
entertainment industry
Part of it, yep.
changing the way
Yeah.
it's changing. I mean, all these acts, you can go on YouTube
Yeah.
and you can see pretty much any act that
Right.
you want to watch. If you want to watch them and hear them, they're right there on YouTube.
Yeah.
And if they're not on YouTube, you know, you can catch them streaming, you know, through the internet. So you're right. You know, that in-person experience, we've got an entire generation coming up that just views the world differently, and we're not reacting to that as quickly as we need to.
And their spending ability's not there
Yes.
But people will tell you there's nothing like being at a live concert.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
Josh?
I was just going to add on to that. The generational difference is important. You know, you've got golf club communities around the state of Maryland, around the country that are going under because millennials don't play golf. You've got, there's a lot of, there's a very different, if you currently go into a casino, you will not see anyone under the age of 35. Okay, maybe somebody working there or whatever. There are generational differences that I think this is a very good time to then acknowledge those and to look at it. Comic cons are big. If you can do something where it's localized and it's comic book conventions or something where it's an experience and people get to be, I think those kind of things are bigger. So I'm also like John. I'm not trying to micromanage or anything, but I am very interested. I do love entertainment, and I do love this venue. I saw the Avett Brothers there a couple years ago. I was surprised there wasn't more people there, but yeah.
If I could add one thing too, Councilman Holloway noted that as far as disposable income, I think sometimes there's a difference between what people want to see and what they're willing to pay to see and what it costs, and that is a challenge. They may say, hey, we want to see such and such, and then you get such and such, and you don't sell the tickets like you expect, and that's a challenge. So we have to, measure the market and what people can spend and what the tickets would cost, and it's a challenge.
Just one last comment on the parent side here. When owning a small business and recruiting physicians to the area, your venue is in that recruiting book because the fact that you have Field 7.5, that you do after school that is very, very big. And I just want to thank you for doing that. So.
This is my last comment. The one chart there that shows the Civic Center net events revenue, it looked like it dropped in 2017 and then spiked up 2018 and dropped again in 2019. I want to know why, if you have any idea. And then the mark, the 1,200,000 mark, what is dropping that revenue mark going to do? 'Cause it looks like you're only off by, what, 200,000?
Yeah, on a good year, we're around $1 million as far as that net number. So I'll let Chuck touch on the first part as far as the fluctuation. A lot of that is just the events that you book and how successful those events are. But as far as dropping that number, the challenge that we face is if that's the number and we can't hit the number, we've got a gap on July 1. And so we have to find ways to fill that gap. And that challenge is getting harder and harder as the cost of goods go up, as minimum wage goes up, as all of our expenses continue to go up, and we're trying not to raise rates. That gap just gets harder and harder to hit. Chuck, I don't know if you want to touch on the 17, 18.
No, it would be cyclical in nature. You had events that were in the year before concerts or different activities that were one-time events. Mm-hmm. And our base book of business is about 40 or 50% of our book. So we have to generate the other 50% with new business that you hope becomes annual, or it's a one-time that comes in year to year. And the success of concerts could vary from year to year. Kelsey Ballerini compared to some other country act that happen in the same year could be different numbers totally.
Okay.
Does the groups coming in dictate the price of tickets?
We go off a tour history, but yes, like AEG and Live Nation are the two largest promoters of shows all across the country. AEG did Kelsey Ballerini. They would have set the prices for that particular show because they bought the entire tour, 30 dates or 40 dates, and they price point it similar in all the markets that they're going to play. If it's shows that we're doing, we would do research and look on. We have touring history that shows us average tickets sold by an artist and the average gross for all the dates that artist has done in a period of time.
Okay.
And that's how we base our ticket pricing.
And the
what market can
problem-
afford.
It's not our fault that the tickets are
Right.
Absolutely. 90% of the time, it would be the promoters that are bringing the shows in or setting the pricing.
Okay.
The problem with acts like Kelsey Ballerina, they're new, they're just getting into the business, and their popularity is rising, but it's not there yet because they're on the charts, but they haven't established themselves where they won't come to a small venue like ours.
Right.
So price is an issue there.
Right.
I only had one other comment, and that's because I've gotten complaints on this, surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, but I've gotten complaints on this, and that is, what your ticket fee charges are, what do you call this, box office charges?
Yeah.
Over and above the price of the ticket. And I think it's proportionate. Others, about 6 years ago, a guy called me, he goes, I don't understand. He goes, the ticket was $25, and then all of a sudden the box office fee was another $12. And they didn't buy the tickets for the show because they thought they were getting ripped off. So my question really is, do you adjust that? So that if you're buying a $100 ticket and it's a $10 service charge for the ticket, you go, that's okay, it's another 10. But when it's like 25 or 35 and it's another 10, you're immediately going, I'm not going to do it. So I'm curious as to whether or not you've built that strategy into your pricing.
Chuck, I'll let you touch on that.
Couple of things. One of the fees that's on top of that, and they're user fees, it's a traditional thing in the industry if you buy from Ticketmaster. I will say our fees are significantly less than other major ticketing companies.
Right.
So if you were to buy your tickets out of market for an amphitheater or another show in DC or Baltimore or whatever, those fees would be significantly higher than our handling fees. But there is a 5% legislative action, so that is 5% of whatever the ticket price is. So, and then you have sliding scale fees that are part of our budget as a revenue stream and other fees that you have to put in on top of the ticket price to the customer. It's kind of the cost of buying a ticket. I know that creates a ton of heartburn
Yeah.
for buyers, and it's
It does.
confusing because, you know, exactly what you're saying, a $100 ticket, now it's 100 and whatever, and it gets confusing, but there's multiple breakdowns of what makes up that fee.
That's the only example I've had of people that actually run in the other direction, when proportionately it's unacceptable.
It's understandable. And it could vary from show to show depending on those fees.
Right.
There should be a truth in advertising thing there where you put a price of a ticket out, and that's what the ticket costs.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, if it's gonna cost you $100 to go to a show or $50 to go to a show, I was down south and we went to a venue, and I went there to purchase tickets the day before the show, and it was advertised what it was gonna cost, and that's what it cost me.
Right.
It didn't, and Steve mentioned parking, free parking. It was interesting. That whole town, I asked the lady about parking. She says, there's not a parking meter in the whole city. I said, really? She says, that's part of our success. That was interesting. But, you know, just have something that's $40 and when they get there it's 48 or 52, you know, that does cause problems.
All right, we need to wrap this up. Steve, do you have anything else to say?
I'll just say one last comment. First of all, thank you for all the comments and questions and the engagement. I will tell you, our staff, it's been a very difficult year for the Civic Center staff. They've taken this to heart. It's been very stressful for them. They've done everything they can do to try to minimize this, and we're working as hard as we can. And your comments here are encouraging, and I know they'll be encouraging to the staff, so I thank you for that, and thank you for the time today.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
You want to share with us about the?
Yeah, Mr. President, if I can I share?
Yes.
Share what the governor said during his, I'll hit the high points.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Major next steps. The upcoming primary is going to be delayed until,
Figured that.
I believe Governor Hogan said June 2nd.
Here's your notes if you want to.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no,
I'm glad you have Laura.
pardon me. Yes, June 2nd. There are ongoing discussions. The Kentucky Derby has already been,
Cancel. Postpone.
well, it's delayed until September. It appears that the Preakness will be delayed until September as well. Restrictions to BWI are being imposed. Only employees and ticketed passengers will be allowed into the terminal, and motor vehicle administration hours are going to be restricted. So with that in mind, I know that we're under a 7-day emergency order right now. I would tell you that from everything that we're learning, that 7 days isn't going to be enough. There's been discussion, pretty serious discussion at the state level about indefinitely delaying K through 12 return. I quite honestly fully expected that to be part of the package today. So from my standpoint, you know, I would tell you, and this is part and parcel of what Steve was just talking about, the situation at the Civic Center isn't going to get any better. I mean, it's going to get worse because we can't have public gatherings of any more than 50 people. I've been invited to a 2 o'clock roundtable discussion at Sperry Van Ness. It's being arranged by the chamber and the mayor to talk about small business relief, and I think that's critically important because, with your restaurants closed, movie theaters closed, we're displacing a lot of workers.
A lot of employees.
So I think this is going to have a significant snowballing effect with our local economy and our state economy. So we realize that we need council approval to extend that state of emergency, but I would tell you that, I believe that we have to do that. This isn't going to resolve itself in 7 days.
Right, we're going to discuss that.
Okay, great. If you need me to stay, I will.
Yeah, I need a motion to discuss the letter dated March 16th, 2020 from the Wicomico County Board of Education regarding non-recurring cost items. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Got a motion, do we have a second? Second. Got a motion and a second, any discussion? Any discussion?
You want to just vote on that motion so you can discuss it?
To vote on it? Yeah, we all in a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye.
And then the discussion.
All right, Mr. Stauffer.
Thank you, Wayne.
If you would give your names and your titles.
Micah Stauffer, Chief Finance and Operations Officer for Wicomico County Public Schools.
Jesse Reed, Controller for Wicomico County Public Schools.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stauffer?
Okay. In front of you, you should have a copy of a letter that is asking for consideration to be able to send one-time funding requests to MSDE for them to consider if those requests meet the guidelines of one-time funding requests for MSDE. If they are in approval, then that one-time funding request would come back to the county for consideration to add to the budget.
Okay. Any questions?
I'm okay with it.
Mr. Cannon, did you have a question?
No, I said I'm okay with it.
Okay, Nicole?
So, just for clarification, the things that you have listed on here, so, for example, the 30,000 for laptop carts at Salisbury Middle for Next Gen STEM. I know this because my son's in the program. And that program's dwindling. I mean, it was at full capacity, and it's almost cut in half with students at this point.
So
Is that going to, is the Next Gen program even going to continue?
I would say that I would not characterize that program as dwindling. We started the program 2 years ago and adding sixth grade to Salisbury Middle School for the Next Gen STEM Academy. We had 2 classes of 25 each. The following year, this year, we then added another grade level of 50 students each in sixth grade. The sixth graders then moved up to seventh grade, and then next year, we will then phase in a third grade level of incoming sixth graders so that each one of the grade levels would have 2 classes of Next Gen STEM Academy students. So this coming year is our last year to phase in the entire program.
And I mean, the STEM program was amazing, but changing from Next Gen, there's been multiple issues. One, you have to have Wi-Fi connection to be part of the program. So if you don't have Wi-Fi at home, you can't be in the program. So that eliminated a large portion of students from even participating. And I know that at my son's class, probably half of them are gone that started in the beginning because of that. Not the rigor of the program, but the access to materials. And so I'm not sure how this is going to help that situation.
I think that information needs to be clarified. I'm not
Okay.
100% that everything that you've said there is accurate. I would say that the program currently allows students on a lottery system And those students are selected at the beginning of each year until the point where we filled each one of those 2 classes as we phase students in. At no point in time am I aware of any requirement that a student must have Wi-Fi capability to be in the program
I
itself.
have the written parent packet, if you want to see it.
That may be something that, again, we could clarify for you.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if that says Wi-Fi capability at home.
Yes, they have to have it at home
okay.
or they cannot participate.
Okay, what I can do is make sure that Dr. Briggs and Dr. Hanlon can clarify that information for you and get that back. At this point in time, we are planning on moving forward with Phase 3 of that program, so that all 3 grade levels will have the Next Gen STEM Academy and the appropriate resources that are part of that program itself.
Okay. This meeting is basically to talk about moving this letter forward. Doesn't mean that we're going to vote on it, so we can discuss this when it does come to us.
We have to vote to move forward, right?
We do. Well, we need a consensus, because this is a work session.
I think what, in the leading paragraph, talking about the processes and how things change, I think the reason things changed was because we gave you, Matt Holloway had suggested $228,000 in additional one-time only spending. And after that was awarded, after that was approved, we realized that technically the board cannot get one-time only expenses from the council unless you first apply for it to the state.
I see, okay.
So that's the reason
That
for
makes
this
sense.
letter.
Okay.
So that if-
Even prior to
Yeah.
consideration by the council, we must have the approval from MSDE that these items that are listed would be approvable one-time funding items, should
That's
you
right.
all approve and add it to the budget.
And there is a deadline, and we
March
won't be
31st.
meeting again prior to that deadline. The question I have, I support this, like Mr. Cannon does. The question I have is, why are we just getting this?
Why are you just getting this now? Because we wanted to make sure first that we had finalized our budget, which was approved at our last board meeting.
A week ago?
Yes, sir. And then this would be the next step in that, for that consideration following the timeline that's provided to us by MSDE.
I wish you would have sent it to us right after the meeting, but that's fine. We're here. I support moving on. Do we have a consensus to send this letter? Darnie?
Yes.
Joe? Nicole? Okay, we have a consensus. Then, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Need a motion to discuss emergency declaration with the Director of Administration. Do you have anything further to say on this declaration? I guess we do. So I need a motion to add this to the agenda.
Add what?
For the administrator to discuss the declaration. He's got more information. So I need a motion.
So moved.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Chair votes aye. Mr. Strasburg, please.
So as I said earlier, this situation won't resolve itself in 7 days. So what I would suggest is that we adopt some resolution that perhaps we would revisit this situation at each upcoming county council meeting so that we can deal with real-time information, understand what the situation is, and then determine whether or not, it's appropriate to continue the state of emergency. What I'm being told, and by demonstration, what you're seeing at the state level is that, as a matter of fact, Governor Hogan said today that this coronavirus epidemic, pandemic, whatever you want to call it, may not resolve itself until early summer. So I think we need a mechanism in place where we can stay in close communication between the executive, the county council, the governor's office, and revisit this on a periodic basis, have real-time data, real-time information, and make determinations as to what we should do in terms of continuing the state of emergency. So that's really why I'm here, because it will expire before your next council meeting, and we should not be in limbo.
So can we agree to do it by phone or?
Ms. Hurley, can you go over what we discussed yesterday via phone?
I mean, you can open up the meetings to the public via phone. I've been working with Dave Shipley, Dave Fitzgerald at Emergency Services with getting it's called WebEx, I believe, is the name of the program, where we can all call into a certain number. You'll enter an access code, but that would also have to be provided to the public. You would request that the public would mute their phones so they wouldn't disrupt the discussions of the council. And then you can, proceed with the public meeting that way.
And Mr. Taylor, you did have a comment in your email yesterday.
Well, my only thought on that is it might just be simpler just to simply meet right here briefly, not go through all this administrative with the phone company and all, because you're going to have to have it so multiple people can call in, not just one person. And by the time you do all that, and you may want to be here for some other reason too.
You have to open up the
So, I mean,
building to
my
the public.
suggestion would just be to schedule a meeting for, the 23rd or something like that?
Can we, does it have to be super majority or can it be just majority?
For the emergency declaration?
Yeah.
To extend it majority.
To extend it.
I believe it's just a majority,
Yeah.
but I can
In
look
case
into that.
some people can't be here.
Same for scheduling an emergency meeting.
Have we pursued Zoom? Because that is something that is open to the public.
I can't hear you.
Have we pursued Zoom that's open to the public? And you can like mute that, the administrator can mute them until it's public comment time?
There's a advisory from the Attorney General that came out last week in regard to doing some sort of a phone meeting and all, and I don't think it mentions Zoom. It does mention doing what Laura has just described generally, but there's, an administrative setup time and possibly even some cost. So it seems to me that the simplest way to do it is just to get together. You need a quorum, and it would be a majority of the quorum.
We just can't have more than
So
10.
if one or two members can't attend, I don't think that would impede it.
We just can't have 10, any more than 10.
Ma'am?
We just can't have any more than 10.
Well, they can certainly participate over
Yeah.
PAC 14, and they can call in.
Right, so
Yeah.
if you call in, you can have more than 10 people on the phone.
Yeah.
You're opening it up to the public, so you can have, I'm not sure the exact number, I can look into that, but it would be a large number of people could actually dial this number, enter access code, and participate in the council meeting.
And you would not have to have public comments on this. There's not any requirement that you'd have to have public comment. You can have it if you want to, but it's not required.
So do we want a public meeting, or do we want to do that via phone?
Public meeting.
You'd rather show up for a public meeting? Got one,
Just
two,
to
three.
clarify, in order to have a public meeting, this building has to be open to the public.
That's fine.
Just like today.
Yes.
So the CDC, NIH, and World Health Organization are recommending not congregating more than 10 people.
We can do that.
That's the latest guidance that we.
So if it's going to be more than 10 people, then we can't.
We have 10 here right now, we have 11 here right now.
Yes, I know. I know, we really shouldn't be.
Don't you think, though, as a logical matter, you're probably going to have maybe at most 3 people show up? I mean, it's not really a hot item.
And it's a guideline, it's not the
Yeah.
law.
Well, no, it's not, but walking across the street with your eyes closed isn't a law either, but no one's going to do it. I
You
mean,
look at,
like,
okay,
let's,
we're already facing budget issues now, and you're causing an expense now. I mean, what's the problem just coming in here? How many people really gonna show up? He might show up. but
so you're going to
all we need is
ignore,
four
you're going to
councilmen.
ignore all the CDC, NIH, okay, we're just going to ignore that.
Well, the sense of the meeting is an emergency meeting,
Okay.
and I can bring that. What about, we're not required to publicly advertise if we?
Oh, yes, we would have to do a press conference or press release. We would
Right.
post it on the website,
Website only?
notify all the social media people.
Okay.
So we're going to ignore their recommendations.
So I've got 3 on this side that would rather be here to have the meeting. Do I have,
Because I'm not
John?
going to go against,
are you okay with it?
Okay.
Josh, you okay with it? All right.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the looking at options to have better ways to have the public engaged and not be here. I think the more opportunities and options we give them the more they might take advantage of it. So whether it be a WebEx or a Zoom or something like this, in addition to having this, I think that spreads out more people. But I do like meeting in person
Yeah,
in general.
This,
but-
this is a meeting, though, just to extend the emergency. It's not a meeting that you need public comments.
Larry,
Yes, sir.
let's look at it like this. We probably need one staff member, right? Lynn and Laura don't need to both be here for that. We'll need 4 council members. We don't need the attorney here, correct, for that meeting? So what I would say, in case somebody else shows up, is try to get 4 council members and 1 staff member here to conduct the meeting. And of course, you'd have to be here because you're president.
Sure.
You know, unless another council member's in opposition to it and wants to come vote against it. So then you'll cut your numbers down to 5 people. So if somebody else does happen to wander in, we won't be, hopefully we won't be over the 10.
And I think we're
If
doing
that's
a
a
good,
concern.
we're doing a good job of our social distancing, so.
Yeah.
All right, do we want to schedule a meeting in-house? Ms. Harley?
Do you anticipate that, Mr. Strasburg?
What's that now,
Do you
Joe?
anticipate that we need an emergency meeting in the next week or so?
Well, I would.
When this
Yeah,
ends?
the executive's emergency declaration
Expires.
expires 7 days from yesterday. So it's
Right.
going to expire, and it can't be extended without council approval. So one thing that you could do today, and parliamentarily, I'm not sure how you do it, but you could vote to extend the emergency declaration until the next council meeting, and we could then
Yeah.
update in real time at the next council meeting, because, this is changing day by day.
Right.
And, today you can't, by law, we can't have any more than 50 people congregating. That could change next week, and it could go down to 25.
Or it
Or it
could
could
go,
go down to 10, or it could go down to nothing. So I'm simply asking that council authorize an extension of that emergency declaration until the next council meeting, and we can take it up again.
Can we do that?
We're in a
That's a-
work
it's- that's a
session.
Well,
Question.
it's
Yeah.
not been on the agenda. It's a good question. The next council meeting is when, April the?
April 7th.
7th.
April 7th.
It's a ways off. What is that? Is that
We
2
have,
weeks
yeah,
or
3 weeks.
3
it's
weeks?
nothing simple. We know that.
It's kind of a coin flipper.
My suggestion would be to have the special legislative session and bring it back in a special meeting.
Wayne, if you did not extend it, what would be the downside for the county if you didn't extend your state of emergency? What
Well,
options
we
would
wouldn't
we
be,
lose?
the emergency measures that we've put in place would be invalid as of the expiration of the 7-day period. That's just not realistic.
What is
So
that,
there
Monday?
are,
It's
there
not going to
are,
resolve itself in 7 days.
so you're saying that there are specifically very solid issues that after 7 days you'd have to revisit or something? I'm confused. What would be the downside? Let's say it stopped after 7 days. What would the county
I'd have to
as?
bring everybody back to work.
Okay, all right,
Which I
that's
don't
what I was
wanna
trying
do.
to clarify, okay.
You know,
all
that,
right.
that would be endangering, the employees, that would be endangering the public. So, I mean, just from a pragmatic standpoint, I just feel as though if we extend it for some finite period of time, revisit with, again, real-time data, we can make good decisions as to, I'm not saying extend it for 3 months, I'm saying, hey, you got to extend it, or you should extend it beyond the 7-day expiration period, because that just doesn't work from a practical standpoint. And what the governor is trying to do is he's trying to put a firewall around the geometric progression of transmitting the disease. So to the extent that you stop social interaction, you're stopping that geometric
That's right.
progression, and I think it's incumbent upon us, from a public health standpoint, I think it's incumbent upon us to take common sense measures to ensure that we're doing the best we can to keep the public safe. So,
Another thought too on that is between now and, for example, if you were to meet next Monday, there might be some other executive.
there may well be.
He might amend that or change it, and you could extend the whole thing then, rather than having to come back separately to do that.
All right.
Okay,
Jeff?
I'm I'm good with next Monday.
So what date are we looking at? Monday, the
It's like
23rd?
Monday, the 23rd.
Okay, so we have a consensus to meet, what time? 9, 10,
7?
7 a.m.? Do you want to meet at 8 a.m.? I have no problem.
You can't get up that early.
You
I
might
used to
want
be
to
able
check
to.
with PAC 14 so they could carry it.
I wonder if he knows.
And
He's
Laura,
listening, he should know.
clarification, just to clarify, this will be an open,
You can be here?
But I will check with, I think the city has a 6 o'clock meeting, so they usually come in by 5, so.
Yeah, well, we're talking about the morning right
Yeah,
now.
no, I was just saying, we'll be here whenever you need us.
So the single purpose of this meeting
I'm
would,
free all day, Larry. It doesn't matter.
so it would be a single purpose meeting?
Right.
Yes.
And-
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Unless
I
you
can
come up
be
with
here
something else.
Do I have a consensus on a time?
so, but just to clarify, so this will be an open meeting, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm not willing to take that liability. Can I call in?
You don't have
It's
to
up you.
attend.
You're council president.
I don't have to
As long
attend
as we get 4
mandatory?
council people.
We got to have 4 council people.
Okay,
I think we've got that here.
all right.
9 o'clock's okay with me.
9 o'clock? Okay, 9 o'clock it is.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks very much.
Yes, sir, thank you.
time, Wayne.
9 a.m. And we'll check to confirm with the city or anything else. I don't think this room will be filled. All right, do you want to take lunch or go into a closed session right now? Joe says take lunch.
Yeah, this is supposed to be a short meeting.
They're never short meetings.
Is everybody okay taking a quick lunch? Take 15 minutes. All right.